Greetings, dear viewers. You are on the Cross Moda channel, Dodge Tomahawk. This unusual motorcycle has been a hero of almost all speed rankings for 20 years, an object of admiration and increased attention. This is an extremely unusual motorcycle that to this day looks more like a futuristic prototype than a production model. A lot of online resources have given this machine titles like the fastest motorcycle, the most powerful, and so on. However, it's not that simple. So let's figure out what's wrong with Dodge Tomahawk. First, it's worth mentioning how, when, and most importantly, why the Tomahawk was created by Dodge. The Dodge Chrysler Company, like other companies, is constantly engaged in one very important task: attracting consumers' attention to its products. Just so you know, every firm, company, workshop, and so on is always doing this. Dodge, as usual, car and motorcycle manufacturers are doing everything right. You're thinking in the right direction. Often, it's either victories in races, certain records, as well as creating unique concepts and prototypes and presenting them to the public. The idea to create a motorcycle with a V10 engine from the Viper came from two Chrysler Group employees, Bob Schrader, a design bureau worker and motorcyclist, and Dave Chiz, a car assembly specialist and drag racer. Schrader and Chiz shared their ideas with Senior Vice President Trevor Creed. Creed initially brushed them off, saying, "Guys, don't waste your time on nonsense. Besides, we don't make motorcycles." However, after a while, he cooled down and allowed them to work on the concept and design of the motorcycle. The idea evolved, and the renderings eventually landed on Freeman Thomas's desk, the chief designer. Thomas suggested using two front and two rear wheels so that the design would look harmonious with the wide V10. He may have been inspired by the light cycles in Tron. The developers of the Tomahawk anticipated outrage from motorcyclists about the use of four wheels, but they focused on uniqueness, and it definitely worked. By the spring of 2002, the designers of this marvel had prepared a full-scale presentation of the project and showed their ideas to Chief Executive Officer Dieter Zetsche and Chief Operating Officer Wolfgang Bernhard. The executives liked the presentation, and the project was approved. And in about a year, the motorcycle was ready in metal, with further development and manufacturing outsourced to RM Motorsports. RM turned Chrysler Group engineers' ideas into reality in metal. The Dodge motorcycle debuted in 2003 at the North American Auto Show in Detroit and made a bombshell impression. The noise from the Tomahawk was so loud that its echoes can still be heard today. 20 years later, Dodge came up with a unique and at the same time quite controversial machine. It's even hard to call it a motorcycle since it has four wheels, double in the front and double in the back. Alright, a motorcycle then. The most important and noticeable thing about this design is the engine. It's a 20-valve V10 with a displacement of 8.3 liters, producing 500 horsepower, with a maximum power output at 5,600 revolutions per minute and 712 Nm of torque, designed for use in a motorcycle chassis. The engine was modified. For example, to lower the center of gravity, they replaced the wet sump with a dry sump. Instead of a single radiator, two were installed in the space between the cylinders with forced cooling air supply. The motorcycle has a two-speed automatic transmission, which transmits torque via a chain drive to the two rear wheels. Also, a reverse gear was provided for such a heavy design. The Tomahawk V10 weighs 680 kg. Each wheel has independent suspension, and the steering angle is just 20 degrees from the motorcycle's axis. According to computer calculations, the suspension allows the motorcycle to lean up to 45 degrees in a turn while keeping all wheels in contact with the road. But in reality, no one has dared to lean this giant that much in a turn. After the sensation, the company bosses were rubbing their hands and dreaming of creating and selling a series of 300 motorcycles. The workshops were buzzing with the assembly of the first production Dodge Tomahawk 510 superbikes. Each unit was carefully assembled by hand and offered to potential buyers in the Neiman Marcus catalog for a modest $555,000. Ultimately, price was the key factor influencing quality and production quantity. Only a very few dared to part with a sum of just over $500,000. Between 2003 and 2006, Dodge produced and sold only 9 units of the Tomahawk V10. The 10th one, which was the prototype that debuted in 2003, remained in the Dodge Museum. And at this point, we've come to the question, what's wrong with the Dodge Tomahawk? Is there something off about its actual top speed? Speculations about the Tomahawk's top speed came from the media and leaked from within the company since the very beginning of this motorcycle story. A Dodge representative said that since the 1.5-ton Viper can reach 305 km/h, the Tomahawk should break the 680 km/h mark. That was a very reckless statement, disconnected from real physics and not supported by any test runs or dyno testing. Later in press releases, Dodge representatives lowered the bar to 480 km/h, claiming that the bike could accelerate from 0 to 100 in 2.5 seconds. Chief designer Mark Walters said that with the current aerodynamic characteristics, to reach a speed of 480 km/h, the Tomahawk engine must have at least 700 horsepower. And without wind protection and well-designed aerodynamics, exceeding 250 km/h in a Dodge is already extremely dangerous. In fact, 20 years after the debut of this marvel, no races or top speed tests have been conducted. Although at the time, several well-known magazines offered to conduct these very tests and were looking for drivers for this venture. Dodge. All of this was declined, and Chrysler's chief operating officer, Wolfgang Bernhard, said that no one had driven the Tomahawk faster than 160 km/d. By the way, the Tomahawk's fuel tank holds only 13 liters of fuel, and at best that's enough for about 50 kilometers of driving. So there's no way this motorcycle can be considered practical, especially in light of all Dodge's loud claims about the potential of their machine and its actual lack of speed. The well-known British customizer Alan Millard built his own motorcycle with a 500 horsepower V10 engine from a Viper. Alan's design turned out to be much more classic and motorcycle-like, and during a run in 2009, he accelerated his creation to 333 km/h. In doing so, the solo customizer outdid the famous American company. But that's another story. To sum up, it's safe to say that the Dodge Tomahawk turned out to be a very interesting showstopper. It made a lot of noise and still excites the minds of motorcycle enthusiasts to this day. And yes, it's one of the most powerful motorcycles in the world, but its top speed capabilities turned out to be greatly exaggerated. At this point, my friends, my story comes to an end. This was Cross Moda Channel. Thank you so much for your attention, as well as for your activity in the form of subscriptions, likes, comments, and shares. See you. Special thanks to everyone who supports the channel financially using the pinned details. See you next time.